one of the foundational parts of your book is this whole idea of panentheism.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So, and this is a term that a lot of people may not know. It's a term that many are increasingly coming to know as a framework for thinking about the divine reality or God and how we as a cosmos or we as individuals relate to God. So panentheism is a word that comes from the Greek, 3 Greek words, meaning all in God. And so it's a word that a number of the contributors use, not all of them by any means. Some feel comfortable using other language, but as a framework, it has several core themes. Okay, and one would be divine inclusion. This notion that far from being external to or outside of the world, which might be the sort of popular sensibility, that we are actually indwelling participants within the life of God, that God's own life includes the universe, right? That the universe lives by its inclusion in the divine life. So divine inclusion would be one. Another would be mutual immanence, right? So that's sort of a fancy way of saying that it's not only the case that the universe lives by virtue of its participation in God, but that God animates the universe from within, right? So we're not talking about external type of interventions from somewhere else. I mean, where, after all, would it be? Right? The famous Russian astronaut who goes into space and comes back and says, well, there's no God, I didn't see anything up there. It's like, well, you've sort of missed the point. We're talking about what are the deepest conditions of the nature of reality. And for panentheism, it's the notion that the world, as Whitehead would say, lives through God's incarnation in itself. Right? And this is a sort of beautiful notion that God is not only the sort of intimate foundation of the world's being, but the dynamic source of its becoming. So God includes the world as immanent within the world. And for many, this becomes a much more imaginative, theological, and philosophical picture, right? So the question of God becomes not so much whether there is or is not a being out there somewhere, but a question of what is the deepest nature, character of the reality we inhabit and already participate in now. And you don't argue whether that exists or not. You only wonder how best to name it, right? And traditionally, that's how God, in the philosophical strains of our traditions, has been understood, that we're talking about something without which nothing at all would be, right? And so in the popular discussion, God's thought to be an extra add-on to the universe. That's not the case. We're talking about the deepest nature of the reality we inhabit. And so panentheism is a framework of immanence and inclusion. It's this worldly framework, if you want, that these authors have come to embrace diversely, but it becomes a framework for returning to God after God for an increasing number of people today.